Welcome to the Made2Homeschool Podcast. I'm Brandon, and my wife Brigitte and I are the founders of Made2Homeschool. In this episode, I got to chat with our friend Jen from Homeschool with Jen. Jen is a homeschooling mama to one child, age 12. She has a master's degree in educational communication, and she's been homeschooling for 4 years now. In this conversation, we got to chat about some of the unique challenges presented by not just being a homeschool mom of one, but doing so in a super rural area of the country. Oh, and she's working at home at the same time, by the way. We got to have some real talk about socialization and curriculum choice and all the things, and I hope this discussion is an encouragement and also maybe a positive challenge to those of you watching or listening. Let's get into it. Jen, thank you so much for making time to do this today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I've been looking forward to it. I've gotten the chance to know you for a couple years now. Has it been like 2 years almost?
That's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for a lot of other folks to get to know you. I've appreciated you being an influence in our movement toward the homeschool journey, like a lot in the last couple of years. We've gotten to see your journey a bit, but also just your friendship, your candor. You're a very frank person, and I value that.
Yeah.
And I hope that our audience gets to know you, if they don't already, a lot today. Would you start us off with that by just kind of sharing how y'all arrived at homeschool being the right choice for your family?
Sure. So I do have an only child, and she actually went to a private school at the very beginning, and she wanted to be homeschooled. And I have a full-time job. At that time, I had a full-time job. And I was just like, there's just no way that this can work. This is not something that can happen, because with my job, I actually traveled quite a bit. And so I just knew that there was no way that we could homeschool. And so for a couple of years, she continuously said, I want to be homeschooled. I want to be homeschooled. And so finally, my husband and I were having a conversation, and we said, okay, we're going to jump in. I'm going to go from full-time to part-time work, and we'll see how we can work this out. I actually quit traveling for my job so that I could be home with her. And we took that plunge, what was that, over 4 years ago now? And it has been definitely ups and downs. Definitely strikes and gutters, but overall, it's been a really good experience, and I'm glad that we did it. And honestly, it needed to be a time when we were both ready for it. I don't think that I was ready for it when she was younger. I wasn't at that point in time ready to homeschool. I needed to get there.
Can you expound on that? What did you need to get ready for?
I needed to get over my personality of everything has to be perfect. And when we jumped into it, I had already done more of the research, and people were saying it's not going to be perfect and everybody is going to be doing it differently. And I don't deal well with that. So it was really God dealing with me of there's different ways for it to be perfect. It doesn't have to be what you see on social media as perfect for it to be perfect for your family. It doesn't have to be what you read in a book as perfect for it to be perfect for your family. And so it was a lot of God saying, you be a doer. You have to be a doer. I heard one time that it's a lot easier to drive a car that's already moving, to steer it. So if we jump in, and then God can steer us to where we need to be and how we need to be doing things, versus when we refuse to even get in that car. So when I was willing to get into the homeschool car, God met me 100% and did a great job of steering it and taking away quite a few of my hesitation points.
So, you're talking about you started moving, and then he was giving you direction, and
Correct.
somewhere in there, and again, there's a uniqueness I know because you've got one child at home. How did you figure out what your approach as an educator was going to be? How would you describe your style? How'd you get there, and why is it right for you?
So my style is eclectic, and the way that I got there is actually pretty funny, I guess. I told you my daughter had gone to a private school, so they used a backup, which is a very traditional curriculum of set down, you read, you memorize, and right, exactly. And so I had purchased the entire year for Abeka, and that's what we were going to be doing. And we were finishing up a previous year and we were moving into the next year. And I'm reading the history and I'm like, we just read this in the year before that. And I'm looking at the science and I'm thinking, well, what happened to Pluto? Like Pluto became
No,
a
Jen,
dwarf
Pluto
planet.
is a planetoid. He got demoted.
Yes. Well, in that curriculum that I had, it's been updated since then. They still had Pluto as a planet. And I was like, this is not working for me. And I already knew that I didn't like Abeka math. And so I was going to change math. That was something that I knew that I was going to do, but I wanted to keep Abeka everything else because that was what my daughter was used to. And I just figured as we were dipping our toes into it, I would change things as needed. Well, that very quickly escalated into changing everything on her with the exception of Abeka language. So we only kept the language out of everything because she asked to get rid of the readers that they had. She said those weren't her favorite. And so we said, okay, we'll get rid of that. We decided to get rid of the history because it was a lot of the same that she had done the year before. I already talked about science, talked about math. And so with that, with my not knowing that I was getting rid of everything, all of a sudden, I became a research woman to try to figure out what we were going to do because I wanted to get away from the Abeka curriculum at that point. And, BJU for the most part covers the same philosophy as Abeka. And so I didn't want to go there. And I heard someone talking about master books. And so I did a lot of research into master books, which is a much more gentle approach than Abeka is. And so that first year we used master books, science and history. And then I still didn't know what to do with math. And my daughter is very bright in math and she needs to be challenged. And so I went to Singapore Dimensions because that is what people told me was one of the hardest math curriculum. They have the best test scores in general for years upon years. And so we went into Singapore Dimensions. So that's how I became eclectic, is just purely getting away from Abeka and not really knowing where I wanted to go. So I went gentle for some subjects. I went hard for other subjects. And all the while trying to be as kinesthetic as possible because my daughter is a very hands-on learner. So that was something else that helped me it helped me in that research of knowing what curriculum we wanted to use.
Well, so first I'll say, because I held this up for those who are just listening, I have these little booklets for reading that are from Abeka. We just brought our 4-year-old home, and she was in a kindergarten program for pre-K kids. So we've got the kindergarten reading curriculum, and I'm using it with her because she was already using it this year. I don't know that we would again. There's nothing wrong with it, but I can already see for me at least, the seemingly unimaginably daunting task of figuring out what's going to work for my child and buying the thing and hoping it's right. And so I'm anxiously imagining that journey you went on. But, we've had a lot of conversations actually in the last couple of years about your specific choices of curriculum, how you got there. And I love that your story, I think, even just now, you mentioned like several different ones to get to where you are now. Your story, I think, is an example for people to give them permission maybe that it's okay to test things out, to try new things and look for what
Oh,
works.
absolutely. Yes. So I mentioned Master Books, right? We started with the God's Design series. And so there's a God's Design Life, there's Heaven and Earth, there's a chemistry one, and there's a physical world one. And so we started that and with the God's Design Life, and my daughter absolutely loved it. It was great. It was just the right amount of science with some really easy experiments. It worked out well. And then, so we used that and then sixth grade came, and that curriculum is noted to be a third grade through eighth grade curriculum. So when sixth grade came, I thought, well, we'll just stick with it. There's no reason for us to switch that curriculum because she likes it. And in sixth grade, you're supposed to do like the more in-depth research and the more in-depth reading and things like that for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And we got into it for sixth grade, and it was not working. And so now in seventh grade, we have switched to Berean Builders, but there's something to be said for the right curriculum at the right season. So Master Book Science was an amazing curriculum for us for upper elementary, for mid to upper elementary. It worked really well. It gave a great foundation. But then as the seasons changed in our homeschool, we needed to look for other curriculum that satisfied our needs for the new seasons.
Well, and Jen, did you primarily have to kind of figure this out between you and the internet? Because I know that y'all are in a pretty rural area. You're kind of out in the hills.
Yeah.
And I know that's been it's been a lot of challenges for you guys. Can you share a little bit about those challenges?
It's been huge challenges. There's no question. And yes, so two things. One, the internet, and number two, the Teach Them Diligently conference. So I loved it when I went to the Teach Them Diligently conference. The first year I went, the only reason I went there was for the exhibit hall. I wanted to get my hands on the curriculum. I wanted to be able to look through it. I wanted to be able to see what it was, how it worked, talk to the individual companies. And that was my primary goal. Now, while I was there, I discovered many, many more great benefits to Teach Them Diligently. But initially, that was why I went, because I don't have a Mardell's here to be able to go and look through the curriculum. We don't have any place that you can look through curriculum. There's not homeschool co-ops. That is not where I live. So you can't take time to trade curriculum with other people. We don't have anything like that around where I live. And so it really was the internet and the Teach Them Diligently conference that helped me in learning about the different curriculum that's available.
And so that was literally worth the price of admission for you.
Oh, it absolutely was. It is what introduced me to quite a few different curriculum companies that I didn't even know existed, but that we now use and is working really well in our. So I would say that was the biggest influence in what I chose, was what I saw at the exhibit hall and Teach Them Diligently.
Yeah, well, so okay, that was figuring out curriculum. Also, you can see if you're listening, my daughter needs attention, so I have a daughter. It's cool. The curriculum issue that I guess solved maybe to some extent by being able to go to the conferences and look at books. And I've been there. I see it. I know. I watched you, by the way. You were like a shark on curriculum. You were like, I'm going to go to this booth, right? Great. But, there's a lot more to it than that. One of the things that we're going to figure out, Made to Homeschool actually is going to be a huge help for us because we don't know who our community would be here as homeschoolers. And it's not in person, but there's a lot of really amazing people on Made to Homeschool that I know I can go to, talk to, ask questions. They'll give me experienced, like knowledgeable answers on things. Love that. Wonderful. God bless you. But it's not the same as a local thing. And you didn't have Made to Homeschool when you started, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. What was finding homeschool community like for you guys? Could you?
It was so hard, just hard. And originally, I had more of a community because of the YouTube channel than what I had in daily interactions. And that is something that I got my support from people who I met through YouTube, which is so wild to me for that to be the people that I look to for support. And, fortunately, I've been able to meet quite a few of my favorite YouTubers for homeschool in person. But what I noticed was something that was so difficult is my daughter's socialization, my daughter's support system for homeschool.
Because that's what people always say. What about socialization, Jen? What about it? Give us the answer, friend.
Yeah. Well, I think that it depends a lot on your situation, your kid's personality, and the season of life that you are in. Because when my daughter was younger, we went to the park and she would say, I met my best friend. This is my best friend. And we could just go to the park and she would all of a sudden have brand new best friends that she wanted to play with and stay with. And it was wonderful. Then there was something that happened right around upper elementary into middle school where she would no longer do anything that was putting herself out there at all. And that was even just going to a park and playing with people. She would not do it. And like I mentioned, I don't have homeschool groups. I don't have co-ops. I don't have anything at that time to really put her into there. I mean, yes, there's church, which people tell you a lot, that you can have the socialization with church, but where we live, again, the church is very limited, and the churches that we had as our option for the youth, she was too old at 5th grade for the younger kids, and then the youth was 6th grade through 12th grade. Well, she didn't want to be around 12th graders. She just felt intimidated by them. And so that was something that was so hard. And one of my friends who we had actually met because both of our kids had gone to the private school. She had decided to homeschool her sons, and they were telling her that they weren't liking homeschool, that it wasn't fun, that they did not want to do it. And we were talking one day and she said, we're missing out. We are missing out on what homeschool is supposed to be. And so she put this thing out on Facebook and said, if you homeschool, we are meeting at the local park on such and such a day, bring your own lunch at noon or whatever she said. And we got there and we cannot believe that so it was our county plus a couple of counties surrounding us, that we just couldn't believe that we had almost 30 kids show up for that first, just like, we're homeschooling and we need friends. And the majority of those kids were middle school age. And when we were talking to people, they were saying there's things for the younger kids. Younger kids can make friends pretty easily about wherever they are. And the older kids, they're kind of more set in their ways already, but there seemed to be quite a few middle school age kids around that just needed friends. They needed that socialization, and they needed something that was a little bit more structured so that they would be willing to say hello to people, so that they would not just stay in their bubble, but play kickball with other kids that were their same age. And so just my friend standing up and saying, we're homeschooling, we're meeting for lunch, bring a bag lunch, that has made a huge difference, because now, even though we're not a huge group of people, there are others that are the same age as my daughter that we can get together with in a very low-key way And that helps her a lot. And plus, I have mom friends there too. So that's nice.
And what I love about that, Jen, is that so we're about to move, hopefully, to a far more rural area than where we are now. We're in the middle of a city right now, and still hard to find community. I've looked a little bit, but we're going to go out in the middle of nowhere, hopefully soon. And what are we going to do? Well, what you just shared, I think, is for me and probably for some folks listening in the audience, an encouragement that if you can do it, if you can find it where you are, it can probably be done.
It definitely can be. And we were all really surprised with actually how many people homeschooled, because since there are no co-ops, there are no events, nobody knew quite how many people around us homeschooled. And that was something that we really learned. And, our little group hasn't really grown that much, but I live in a small area. So without homeschoolers really growing very much, our group can't grow very much, which is fine. But the last one that we had, we did have some new people who actually came. They drove over an hour for us to be able to just hang out in a park, for them their kids just to be able to hang out in a park with other homeschoolers.
That's amazing.
So that is something, it reminds me of what Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think that I know that we hear from people, especially again in rural areas, saying, I just don't know that we'll have the support. I don't know that we can do it. And I think that you have a lot of, even with the platform you have, Jen, I think you've got a lot of opportunity to encourage parents that it really, really can be done. And I wonder how many are saying, no, I can't. And they need to hear, yeah, you can. Because we know the homeschool movement's growing. My estimate based on statistics I've seen is something like 6 million people homeschooling in the United States. Not 6 million families, but 6 million-ish people. That's crazy. It's a lot. So how many are wishing they could do it, are investigating this year? And, half-ish of the country is outside the cities. How many people need to know it can be done? So I think that's tremendous. But it sounds like you've made progress, that you've built systems and you found some ways to handle being in a rural area. Has that been your greatest challenge? Like what has been the most unexpected hurdle you've had?
Wi-Fi.
No internet. That's the issue?
Yes. So, one of the biggest challenges as my daughter is getting older, I have the question of, can I teach that subject? When your kid is younger, it's a lot easier to be able to say, yes, I can teach that. I can teach that. I can teach that. And then as we're getting older, science is becoming a little bit more in depth and a little bit more of words that I don't exactly know how to pronounce, let alone what they mean. I've been looking for programs that are online. And my problem is I don't have reliable internet to be able to do something live to put my daughter in a class. So another example is something like redefining school. I have looked into that and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I can make it work, because want her into a class with others where she can give feedback and get feedback, but you have to have reliable internet to do that.
Right.
And so that is truly something that when I started this journey, reliable internet was not something I even had on my radar as an issue that I would need to overcome or figure out or anything like that. But yeah, so if you ask what's most surprised me, Wi-Fi.
Well, that's the most surprising challenge. What about on the other side? What about what has been the most surprising blessing to you and your family of endeavoring on your homeschool journey?
The experiences that we get to have together. So when we were studying the Civil War, we were able to go to Gettysburg together and walk through the Gettysburg and really appreciate what that meant. When we were studying fossils, we were able to go to a fossil museum and look have that hands-on experience with that. And just those experiences, getting to have the hands-on experience and getting to have it together has been something that I will forever treasure. I am so thankful for those experiences.
I think that's one of the things that myself have already just in a couple weeks. Like my wife and I, she was off for a day the other day, and we were driving around, and my daughter asked about something, and we got to like teach her about it in the car while driving around. And we looked at each other, realizing this is an experience we never would have had. And our kids were in a great Christian school that was entirely destroying all of our savings. You know, it's great. But it wasn't, we didn't have complaints academically about the school at all. But even though we only get that day, you know, if my wife's off and I'm with them and right? It's not all the time. That day would literally never have happened if my daughter was in the school all the time. And
Right.
she's 4. I've got at least 14 more years of that with my daughter. And when my son comes home after Christmas, I've got another decade with him that we get to have those experiences together. So I love that was a blessing to you and your family. And that's time you'll never get back that you get to have. Jen, can I ask you just a few rapid fire things real quick?
Absolutely.
Cool. Number 1, just because I want to steer to M2H a little bit. Can you tell me your favorite thing you've seen, like your favorite interaction in the community you've seen that made you go, yeah, okay, this is the right thing?
One of the contributors for M2H had something very tragic happen, and watching the community come together and support her, no questions asked. We just knew that there was somebody that was in the community that needed to be loved on. And the community absolutely 100% went above and beyond. And when that happened, I was like, this is what we need. The community is absolutely there for people.
That's what I hoped would happen. That's what we tried to be intentional about building. The beautiful thing is, when I interviewed that person for the podcast, they said the exact same thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
They said the exact same thing, and how absolutely overwhelmed they were with the love and the care from people. And that, you know, more than anything, it's seeing those things that make me just remind me we're on the right path. Okay, on a more practical side, Jen, what is your favorite type of resource to contribute to Made2Homeschool? What do you like making to help people on M2H?
Anything for middle school. So I know that with the only child, I am 100% focused on middle school right now because that's the season that we're in. And so I like the printables for middle schoolers to use. I like talking about resources for middle schoolers in articles or however, but anything that's related to middle school is really what I am focused on creating right now.
And one last question, Jen, before you go. What would you say is your greatest hot take or like unpopular opinion in the homeschool world?
That there are seasons in your life where you have to be intentional about socialization for your kid.
And why is that contentious? Tell me about that.
Well, because there are quite a few homeschoolers who say my kid will get socialization, just naturally part of life, get socialization. And I believe that there are times when, yes, your kid will get socialization. But then there comes times where your child needs structured socialization, planned socialization, and you need to put so much time and effort into making this happen that it may come above what you thought your priorities were going to be that year. You thought your priorities, curriculum-wise, educational-wise, whatever, was going to be one thing, and socialization needed to take the forefront. And I really, truly learned that last year. We had to take time for socialization in our homeschool.
You know what I love about that answer, Jen, is that it does away with what I think has become a straw man in the homeschool world, where there's memes, right? I'm just so tired of hearing people ask me about my children and socialization. And probably the people who ask that are ignorant of the opportunities in the homeschool world, and they've got a tilted view, yes, but we ought not, I think, strawman the argument of those who disagree with our approach, but rather say, yeah, that's a real issue. Here's what we do about it. And I think that we'll
Right.
win a lot more people over that way. So I absolutely love that response. Jen, where can people find you on the internet?
So I am Homeschool with Jen on YouTube and Instagram.
Awesome. And Made to Homeschool, I'll find you there too, yeah?
Oh, and Made to Homeschool. That's right. Absolutely.
Jen, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon.